fine, but apparently not, just me. Thank you guys so much for being here. This is a very, very important session. Not only, not only because of the importance of advocacy in our community, the power of our community, and I can tell you one thing, this community is incredibly powerful when it comes to their voice. But I am really, really excited to introduce you to one of my new dear friends. This is Ryan Fisher. He is the new Chief Operating Officer of FAST. Hopefully will give you the very long, extensive list of things that he's done in the past 15 and 20 years of his career. But when I first met him, the first thing I thought was how incredibly lucky we are to have him in our community for all the work he's done in the past 15 years in the rare disease space. He has done so many amazing things to advocate for other rare diseases that now he's bringing all of that knowledge into our community. And in the short period that he has been in this community, he has done an incredible amount of work on the Hill, local level. He's done so much work with the ASF in partnership with us, and he is just a beautiful human. And if you have time, please spend time chatting and talking with him. But today he's going to talk to you all about advocacy from multiple levels, but also just to make you guys aware of what's happening in the space and this partnership between Angelman Syndrome Foundation and FAST, mostly led by this amazing guy because he knows everything and I am a little behind on it. But he's going to talk about what's going on, how to engage you, how to get involved. So he'll give a presentation and then feel free to ask any questions you would like. But let's give him a warm ASF welcome to his first Angelman conference. Thank you so much, Ryan.
Such a warm introduction. Thank you so much. Delighted to be here. Grateful for our partnership over the last year and a half. I'm delighted to discuss progress we've made through our collective efforts over the last several months and share results with you for the first time today for the community from some of those efforts. But ultimately, Amanda and I are here to recruit you as well. Your voice, your perspectives, your insights are key to driving our advocacy agenda forward. Without it, we're an empty vessel. You must be at the center of all activities related to advancing drug development, improving care, and quality of life. Your voice has to be central, and we need your help along the way. In truth, you became an advocate the day of diagnosis, let's face it, right? You have that muscle, and that muscle has strengthened over time. You have those skills. We want to harness those skills towards policy and legislation because advocacy leads to better decision-making by people who are empowered to make decisions on behalf of your loved ones. So we want those people to be as informed as possible on how you think and feel about drug development, about care, so that they make actually informed decisions. These are folks who don't live with this every day. So advocacy enables them to understand these things and then what we hope make decisions that will benefit this community. Because we are essentially at the center of a drug development ecosystem, right? And this is made up of living components, humans, including researchers, doctors, Congress, federal agencies, pharma, and even payers. These are all people who have power to make decisions that affect your life, right? So the idea is we want them to understand AS so that they can make a more informed decision that can ultimately impact this community. And in that ecosystem, they are impacted by and essentially come through with legislation, policies and regulation, funding cycles, and markets, and advocacy groups are sort of working with these patients to enable change on a number of these levels, including policy and legislation. And it's why we need to take a multi-pronged approach to our advocacy efforts. It has to be focused on Congress, regulators, and then even state advocacy. So both federal and state matter when it comes to advocacy. and it has to be AS focused. And then there is an element of rare disease policy and legislation that affects all of the 8,000 rare diseases. So we often come together to change policy and legislation. So Congress, and it's hard to convince you to want to talk to these people, but it matters so that they are actually really putting forth policy initiatives and legislation that can impact not only rare disease, but AS. And they're a reactive body, okay? Advocates, your stories, your personal stories, really do make an impact when you engage with those policymakers. And Congress are driven by your demands. They have to set their priorities. And what I've learned in my 18 years working in Duchenne muscular dystrophy is that face-to-face interactions really do make all the difference when it comes to making a change with these lawmakers, and then hopefully leading to action that supports legislation and policy for our community for both rare disease and AS. So why Congress? Well, a few things. So Congress has the power of the purse, right? They fund the government. It's one of their key powers. So they set priorities and direction for these federal agencies that touch Angelman syndrome, right? We want to influence that funding and that direction. And we do so by speaking to these elected representatives to advocate for those federal dollars. We want an increase in focus and funding when it comes to Angelman syndrome. And these are all the agencies that touch Angelman syndrome. So we look at our strategy and how can we work through Congress to essentially impact these agencies and how they view, look at, fund, and focus on Angelman. They also pass major pieces of legislation related to care and drug development. So we want to be at the table to tell them why passing a piece of legislation could essentially improve the quality of life or improve the way rare disease drugs are developed and reviewed by agencies like FDA. And the good news is this is nonpartisan, okay? In this age of tribalism and politics, and we go to Washington and we leave our politics at the door. It's actually a beautiful thing. I will advocate and talk to any member of Congress that I disagree with on a whole host of issues because I'm not there to talk about that. Any member, any party can be a champion for our cause, and they become champions through you. So that's why it's so important. It's nice to go there and not go there with one political sort of leaning or the other. So we held our very first inaugural Congressional Advocacy Day. You see some members of our community in these pictures. If you see them, talk to them about their experience. Overall, it was a very positive experience. And we set out on March 6th to storm the Hill and make lawmakers understand our community so that they can make better decisions for you all. We had 65 advocates from 23 states. It was very exciting for a first year out. We get you ready. We're not asking you to be experts in policy and legislation. We're asking you to tell your personal story. Because when you educate these folks about Angelman syndrome, the hope is it leads to empathy and action. And that's what we're trying to achieve here. So when we looked at our agenda overall, we knew that there were some key federal agencies that impact Angelman syndrome that we had to look at focusing on, right? You're very familiar with the National Institutes of Health. They're the largest funder of biomedical research in the world. They have funded several AS initiatives. They've contributed to the natural history studies and a whole host of other grants. And we want to ensure that they're focusing their investment appropriately in the AS and keep building on what they've supported to date and partnership with them. The FDA, for obvious reasons, we want to focus on them. They are at the end of the process, the arbiter of whether or not the treatment should be approved. And we need them to understand this community so that they can make an informed decision at the end of the day. And we'll talk about FDA a little later in my talk. And we also want them to understand the evolving regulatory science that exists in Angelman syndrome, because it is evolving at the end of the day. And then a lesser probably known target would be the Department of Defense. Now they have a pot of money that I'll talk about in a bit that we want our researchers to be able to access, because it's a large sum of money, to put in grant requests for research for Angelman syndrome. And it's only a list of conditions that has access to this list of possible grants. And they have a track record of funding rare disease. In my past world in Duchenne muscular dystrophy, we ended up able to leverage $80 million for the research community to access, to fund therapeutic development in a whole host of projects. So this is going to get a little policy wonky, but report language is part of the funding process, right? So Congress takes your tax dollars and they direct them towards the federal agencies, and they also tell them how to spend the money, right? This is where we can actually get into the process. So they spend these through the appropriations process, and they fund all the federal government, including those agencies that matter. And they send it along with a report. And so, for instance, the NIH will get their big sum of money, and they'll get a huge report from Congress saying, we heard from our constituents, and here's where we think you should actually target your efforts related to a given condition. Not every condition is listed, because not every advocacy community will go in and tell Congress, hey, what is the NIH doing for Angelman syndrome? How can they do it better? And here's where we think they should target their efforts. So it's a very important part of the overall process. So our ask this year was about report language. We went to Congress and we wanted Congress to request to give direction to the NIH. We wanted them to build on the support already that exists in Angelman, but we also requested that they convene stakeholders across the ecosystem, including advocacy, including FDA and researchers and clinicians, and to create a roadmap for advancing things like outcome measures and biomarkers, which we know are so important to understanding the effects of these drugs. The time is now. We've made a lot of momentum, but we do know that we need a better roadmap going forward. Similarly, with the FDA, we wanted FDA to have a renewed attention to these endpoints and novel biomarkers that we're seeing advance. It's things like EEG, things you've been hearing about or will be hearing about a little later on from the companies. We also want them to take a special attention to how they actually assess the gains in these outcome measures when they are before them. Because in our view, there's an evolving science that there are more appropriate tools to show a change from baseline for an individual with Angelman syndrome. As we know, there's differences across the population, but there are new tools that we're pushing called gross scale values, which we won't have to go into here, but we want them to use those appropriate tools. And then on the DoD request, so a little bit about this. Congress started this in 1992. We know the NIH funds all that medical research. Well, the Department of Defense had service members and people that were diagnosed with catastrophic illnesses, and they said, well, why don't we start our own pot of research that would be unique and could advance things like clinical trials and biomarkers and outcome measures. So it started in 1992, and research funded, it funds a whole host of things. We want our researchers in AS to have access to this money. Let's leverage as much money that's out there, especially federal dollars, so we could advance research and drug development. So there's over $370 million in the last pot of money. And what we essentially want to do, and we ask Congress to include Angelman syndrome, because we're not listed as an eligible condition right now. Researchers can't go into this money yet. The way you do that is you work with Congress and say, we are a condition that can help other conditions if you learn from drug development in AS. And we are paving the way for other like diseases. So we ultimately want to get on this big list of conditions. And we made the case. We all went to the Hill. And we're waiting results. So what we have accomplished and what we're reporting for the first time today, after 125 meetings, some of you in the room participated. We submitted over 95 requests, and we are thrilled to report the draft language for the House and Senate includes our report language that we brought to the Hill, and this was the first year going out here. This was huge. It's absolutely huge. I had old colleagues saying, how did you do that in the first year? Well, it was the advocates. They did an incredible job, and we need more help. We want to up those states. We want every member of Congress to know Angelman syndrome, make it a priority, and the only way we do this is we go back. And I told them that, we'll be back. So we've already set a date for the next Congress. So we're waiting the CDMRP. Washington's all about acronyms, so like you need a library to understand all the acronyms, but the Congressional Directed Medical Research Program, we're currently awaiting if we actually made the list, but this will be a heavier lift. We're gonna have to go back and keep saying it. Consistent, persistent advocacy wins the day. That's it. And I know you're already asked to do a lot, but we found from even this first year, many folks said, you know what, this is something I want to do. It's an empowering experience. We are also initiating action alerts for those who want to send messages from home, which will be a way for those who can't attend to also contact their members of Congress. So more to come on the DoD request, but we're hopeful over time we'll be able to really annoy them enough to put us on the list. So we're also supporting legislation. Amanda and I have been putting out alerts related to this, related to things like caregiver impact and care, as well as treatments. And I'm not going to go through each piece of legislation. We've posted about why we support it. And we do this through group letters with other organizations. And you know, if something rises to the top with that, we're going to ask you to contact your members. We will let you know. And then there was an SSI Act. In my view, this bill right here, it's called the ACE Kids or Accelerating Kids Act. This enables you to travel outside of your state if an expert's in a different state, and for Medicaid to actually cover that. Now, in the past, this wasn't possible. The reason I highlight this one is, in my opinion, this is the best chance of passing this Congress. Many of these bills will take several years, but we're going to still stay on them, and I credit Amanda, her board, her staff for actually flagging us with many of these bills and saying, this matters, we need to push this. So it's been a really nice combination and marriage of a strategy. So, join us. Join us next year. We will get you ready. We are not asking you to be policy and legislative experts or lobbyists. What we're asking you to do is tell your personal story. These are things you've been doing since diagnosis. And we're trying to get people on the Hill to understand what a day in a life is. Because if it was their loved one, what would they do? I would hope they would probably be in these offices asking Congress, how can you do better to advance our drug development, our care, and improving quality of life? So we've set the date. We hope we see more of you there, and more to come on that. So regulatory, I don't need to underscore how important regulatory is as we enter into these later stage trials. There's so much we need to ensure that the FDA, who are going to be making decisions on behalf of your loved ones when it comes to a new drug application, we need them to understand Angelman syndrome inside and out. Otherwise, they're not going to make an informed decision, and we're not going to let that happen. So we want to enhance their understanding. You know, regulators make benefit risk determinations based on data and what's available to them. Essentially, this is a value judgment they're making, okay? And they need to understand what you value in a treatment. Even a minimal benefit could be, you know, really incredible for improving quality of life, but they may not understand that. So they want to understand your lived experience, your preferences for treatments, what's meaningful benefit. And we have opportunities to engage them, and we want to do this. And they're both direct engagement, and it's also data collection. And I know you hate surveys. We ask so much, but I will say that if Amanda and I put out a call for taking a survey, we mean it's going to go somewhere and go to somebody and the right people. That's our hope. So we want to really enhance the understanding of this so that people can make the right decisions about our community. So in 2012, we worked on a piece of legislation, this is in my old world, with rare disease colleagues, on ensuring that patient perspectives and the patient voice was actually included in the drug development evaluation by FDA. And this was landmark legislation for a few reasons. So one, and this is something Dr. Emil Kakkis worked on years ago with the Every Life Foundation, and we partnered with the use of accelerated approval on rare disease. The FDA had the ability, but it wasn't codified. So this was put into, and you've probably seen over the last 10 years, more accelerated approvals, I know in Duchenne, but in other conditions. So we wanted that codified, and it made it into this bill. It also mandated that the FDA was more transparent about how are they incorporating your views into their decision making. I remember telling my mom what I was working on at the time, and I said, well, we have to make FDA tell us that they're actually incorporating the views of patients and caregivers into their decision making, and she was shocked. She's like, you have to legislate that? I thought they did that. Well, we had to legislate it and actually ask them, tell us how you're doing it. Tell us how you're weighing this information. And to incorporate your overall perspectives in the whole process of drug development, including in the protocol design, et cetera. And in response, the FDA launched something called, and another acronym is coming, Patient-Focused Drug Development, or PFDD. This is something you should know. So this is where FDA wants to hear directly from patients, and that was a result of the bill. So it's a new public-facing framework where at the end of the day, when a drug is approved, they have to tell us how did they incorporate your views into the decision making, if any. And they also created a mechanism for us to meet directly with them, with our communities, and come up with a meeting structure so that there would be direct engagement between those who are making those decisions at the regulatory level and the communities that are pushing for potential options when it comes to therapeutics. So what's on a regulator's mind when it comes to making a decision on whether or not to approve a drug? Well, several factors. One is to understand the overall understanding of the disease. Many times that's based on literature and what they see in publications and what's presented to them by companies. They want to understand the impact of the disease on people and their families. They want to understand your perspectives about the available treatments or lack thereof and the unmet medical need. They want to understand the natural history. Many of you have participated in it. This has been evolving over time. And when a drug is put in front of them, what is the potential benefits and what's most meaningful in terms of those benefits and how you care about benefit-risk trade-offs at the end of the day if there are some risks associated. So that's why patient experience is so important, and they've now, the terminology now is patient experience data, and it spans a whole host of types of data, and it could be anything from interviews with families, it could be patient-reported outcomes, it could be patient preference data, because the thing is, the science behind these therapies, there's a gap that exists between that and the actual patient experience, right? So you've got the mechanism of action and how the drug may be working, but in between all of those things, we have to bridge that gap with your patient experience, how you care about which symptoms to treat first, the overall disease impact, quality of life, burden of disease, and your benefit risk preferences. So engaging the FDA is critical. Amanda and I are excited to announce that in February, we submitted a letter of intent to the agency, and we asked for one of those meetings, those PFDD meetings, to meet with our community. It'll be virtual. You'll all be able to attend so they can better understand as we head into these later stage trials about how you think and feel about these emerging therapies. So we're calling this Hope in Action. You all can participate. And it's January 29th, the beginning of next year. And we hope you will take the chance to participate in some way, and I'll talk about how. So the focus of this meeting is FDA gave us the thumbs up and realized they get hundreds and hundreds of requests, and the fact that they said yes means they want to learn more from you. So there's going to be opportunities for you to participate and to give your own input and data. The goals of this meeting: spotlight what matters most to you when it comes to these treatments, improve their understandings of Angelman syndrome so they can walk away with a better understanding and make a more informed decision, and the aspects of the condition that the community would most like to address with these treatments, and overall informed drug development programs related to these FDA reviews. Those are the main goals. So how you can get involved: we're going to hold a webinar August 20th, and we're going to talk about this meeting in more detail. We're going to give you ways you can get involved. There's going to be an important pre-meeting survey that takes place. And that survey is going to allow you to lend your voice, your insights, in a report that's going to be produced after the meeting that's going to live in perpetuity on the FDA site. So that if a reviewer says, oh, I've got an Angelman syndrome drug that's coming before me, okay, there's a report. And the report will give me more insight into what this community thinks and feels, okay? So please consider taking the survey. We'll be launching it by the end of the summer, we hope. It will precede the meeting. The meeting will happen in January, but you'll learn all of this August 20th. I hope you'll join us. And then, of course, join us virtually for the actual PFD meeting on January 29th. You'll be able to listen in, ask questions, take live polling, and just be a part of this conversation. We really want the FDA to get a representative sample of this community because they may hear from a small subset of folks, but if it's not representative of the larger community, they're not making a real informed decision that's representative. So we do hope you participate. So everyone can do something along the way. FDA, the PFDD meeting, as I talked about, take the survey, and then participate. When it comes to Congress, the annual fly-in, we have a date. We'll be talking more about this in the coming months. And we're launching advocacy hubs on our website on how you get involved, send action alerts, and learn more about our asks. We want to build a grassroots army in every state. We want everybody who represents you in Congress to know Angelman syndrome and make it a priority. That's our goal. So please join us, join the Army. I didn't get to talk about state advocacy, so Amanda and I are actually planning a Q4 strategy call with the community on how you can get involved with state-based advocacy, because at the end of the day, where you live does matter. We all know that Medicaid is a patchwork of mess, and each state defines things differently. There's things we want to look at to impact those things. So we're going to look at state legislation and engaging Medicaid, because when these drugs are approved, we also want to look at, can we ensure they're going to cover these high-cost drugs? And we're going to start that process now to really get ahead of it. So we stand on the shoulders of so many in advocacy that has paved the way for us. And I am quite certain we're going to be paving the way for others. And we can only do this without all of you and your help. Please don't be intimidated. We give you all the tools to do this. We just need your participation at the end of the day. So with that, I thank you.
Let's give a big round of applause for Ryan. If you don't mind staying up there, we have a couple minutes for questions, if that's okay. But thank you so much for all that amazing information. I know when he was preparing the slides, he wanted to make sure to have everything, as much information possible for you guys, but we only gave him a short period of time. I know he's going to stick around, so if you have any more questions after, please feel free to do so. But I have a microphone. Taylor has one. Do we have any questions? There's one over here.
How important is it that you interact with your state congressman versus just general outreach?
I think that your state representatives, so look at, there'll be the federal representatives being the House and the Senate, and then there's the state representatives that are within the state who do things like the Medicaid, et cetera. I think it's important to get to know all of them, because I will say that you'd be surprised how little interaction they get from their general constituents. On our federal strategy, it's critical, and there's in-district meetings for your House member. Your Senate members are a little harder when it comes to that, but virtual meetings do happen. Persistency and consistency win the day. And if they hear from you, not harass and stalk, but gentle harassment and stalking is acceptable. You want them to truly get to know you, and you create relationships, because at the end of the day, we're going to create champions for our cause. So, and we can provide all the tools to do so. It's a great question.
If I can add to that too, I think some of you have texted me right now and said, I'm ready, I need to get involved. How can I do this? Where can I start? ASF and FAST work very close with a very large organization on the Hill called EveryLife, and they have a rare disease week every year. And this is a really good start because they help actually schedule all of those meetings with your constituents in your area. So if you've never done this before, the first thing you can do is just register for that. It's free, and then they will connect you to schedule those virtual meetings. So it's a good start. And then we can also help prepare you for those meetings. But for those of you that are really kind of anxious to get started but don't know, that could be a really good place to start as well.
Yeah.
I want to encourage you to do advocacy with your government. I belong to a group, and they send out to me the bill number, the phone number, the names of my reps, my senators. It takes minutes, just a few minutes to make a difference. Just a few minutes. And if you don't get a hold of them, where I live, you can leave a voicemail. I mean, it probably takes me a half hour to an hour a month at the most for advocacy. And it makes a difference. I hear back.
That's awesome. Thank you for that. And I do want to extend a shout out to family members. We have some incredible grandparents. We have siblings. We have even younger siblings. In my past world, I had two siblings that did, in their 10, 11 years old, did the Hill every year for years. Both of them now work for US senators as health staffers because of that experience, which just blew my mind. But our siblings are so important to advocacy. So consider extended family as well, and the research community too.
Hi, I'm a parent and I also work in DC, so I know how this kind of goes. But I work for the FCC, so it's totally different. But I just want to let you know that we log every single thing. We know who called. We know what your responses are to our comments and questions. So it's not like it goes into a black hole. It really does get counted. But my question was, I know you went to Congress this past March, and I know the focus seems to be on the drugs and getting money for the drugs, but are you talking about all those other bills, and how are you hitting up those? Because the drugs will be long-term, but this is what we're living now. So
Yes.
How do we get those handled?
At the end of the day, you're left with the task of living, right? And your day-to-day matters so much. So those legislative pieces are often coalition group, cuts across many other communities, right? So we're instituting an action alert system online where it'll take 2 minutes, you put in your information and send a message. Now, when we go to the Hill for our specific fly-in, Amanda and I evaluate all those bills you're talking about, and we are going to be adding some of those to the agenda to say, while I've got you on this may not be AS specific, this actually cuts across many families. We need you to support this and why. So we are going to continue to monitor those. It's a really good point. It needs to be a balance.
Just one point on those action alerts. They're great because all of us know we have 2 seconds to fill something out. But let me just tell you, as somebody who reads all those, please make it personal. Yeah. If you don't make it personal and you just do the boilerplate, they get stuck into a bucket over here, which was express comments. And not that that doesn't have power, it does, but if you actually change it up and write it specific for you, someone actually has to read that and log it and actually, notice that it was different. So just a point there.
It's so true, and we leave a space exactly for that. Tell us your personal story to include in your message to a member.
Hi, Ryan. I don't know if this would be for you, for Amanda, for Allison. I don't know. I have like the Mecca right here. But so on a state level, is there a way that we can get access to the database of like how many people in each state? So then if we're advocating in our specific state, we can say, in this state alone, we have such and such amount of individuals with AS.
Yeah, I think this is a good segue too, and sorry, that'll have to be the last question because I know everyone's hungry. The one thing we do have is that we're launching a brand new website here in a couple of months, and what you'll be able to do, there's actually a heat map with our contact registry, and ASF, thanks to Frank McCullough, who's sitting over there quietly, started about 31 years ago. And so we have 30 years of contact and information and people in every single state. So you'll be able to go through that heat map and see how many, who is where and how many is where. So that can help very much, especially when you're talking. We just had a meeting with
the group in Minnesota, and when we told them how many people are living with Angelman syndrome in Minnesota, they were shocked. And so that is really good information to have, so it will be available for sure.
Amanda, I wanted to squeeze in one more question, but also I wanted to say that some of the individuals who attended Advocacy Day are here. So if you actually have any questions, I know I did, Leslie, you can raise your hand. So if you have any questions about the actual experience, feel free to come and speak to us as well. But one more question.
Hey, so I just wanted to kind of flip the focus just a little bit to local advocacy. What you're doing is huge. It's how we drive long-term lasting change. I work for the government, and I know that that is a very long timeline. What we're doing today likely won't see impact for many years yet to come. What I want everyone to consider is what you can do to be a local advocate in your community. And that's not just with your institutes and your doctors, that's with your neighbors, with your school district, with everybody that you interact with every day. Something that I've learned over the years is by inserting Zoe into social situations, not only am I giving her the experience, but I'm also giving the neurotypicals experience to interact with neurodivergent kids. And that's a really big thing that people tend to forget in my experience. So be the voice for your kid because they don't have their own. Everybody in Northwest Arkansas, like it or not, knows me, and they know my daughter, and our day-to-day life has improved because of my willingness to speak up for her when she needs it. And that's how you can drive really immediate change for your day-to-day life while this big stuff is going on in the background.
Agreed. It has to be a both and. It does. We have to do these things in parallel, and we'd love to talk to you more about what we're doing around the state level, but it goes beyond even, piece of legislation or Medicaid. It's stuff you're talking about, so.
I'd like to add to that too. I think the beautiful thing about having two very impactful and active advocacy groups within the space, we have very different focuses. But when you bring those two focuses together, what you're seeing is one that really understands the regulatory, the research, the funding, and then the ASF that really wants to focus on how we're supporting the families now. And the goal is to bring those two efforts together and make sure that we're both balancing each other and saying, hey, what about this? Let's bring your power over to this, and vice versa. So hopefully you'll start seeing that a lot more. And I think that's the beauty of the two organizations working together in that way.
Yeah,
so.
and Washington, they were actually a little put off. They're like, so you're working together on this? We don't really see this often. So we're hoping it rubs off on them on how to work together. But it really is so critical that we combine our expertise to drive policy, legislation, and really advance drug development at the end of the day.
Thank you so much, Ryan. Let's give him a round of applause. Please come up and introduce yourself to him. He is not new, but he's only been around for a year. He's new to the ASF over here community, so make sure you introduce yourself. Go have an amazing lunch, and we'll see you guys this afternoon.